Alright, here we go, everyone. The final preview of round one. Toronto and Montreal. There are a lot of stories in North Division Canadian matchups. And this one's no short of stories. An original six matchup. Here we go. North Division playoffs starting Wednesday with Edmonton and Winnipeg. Toronto-Montreal starts Thursday. Better late than never. Here is our bracket. Yeah, we've done this a couple of times already. Alright. Here we go. First seed versus fourth seed in the North. Toronto versus Montreal. Game 1 Thursday, May 20th in Toronto at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. 4:30 p.m. Pacific on the West Coast. Alright, here we go. Toronto, 35-14-7, 77 points. Your top six skaters: Zach Hyman, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Nick Foligno, John Tavares, William Nylander. Top four defense: TJ Brody, Morgan Riley, Justin Hall, Jake Muzzin. Goaltending: there are a lot of choices here, right? Jack Campbell, 17-3-2 record. Amazing record for him. 2.15 goals against average, 921 save percentage. Freddie Anderson, 13-8-3, 895 save percentage this year. A little bit of a regression for him. Played some AHL games. Had some conditioning stints, yeah. Further backups, we have Michael Hutchinson and David Riddick. I don't think they'll get much action, but we will see. Power play, 20%, 16th in the league. Penalty killing, 78.5, 24th in the league. Season series went 7-3 for Toronto. They outscored the Canadiens 34-25. The Canadiens snuck into the playoffs under 60 points with a 24-21-11 record. Overtime losses prove important for them. They just won 24 games when they're in the playoffs. They lost 8 more games than they won. They made the playoffs. Top 6 skaters: Tyler Toffoli, Nick Suzuki, Joel Amria, Thomas Tatar, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Josh Anderson. Brendan Gallagher and Philip Dano were injured. I believe Gallagher will be back for Game 1, but we will see. Ducharme's also taking Kotkaniemi out for Game 1 for his reasons. Top 4 defensemen: Shea Weber, who is practicing again and likely will be back for Game 1. Ben Sherratt, Jeff Petrie, and Joe Edmondson. Goaltending, of course, the Carey Price, who was injured. He might be back. He was on a conditioning stint for Laval Rocket for the last game of the season. Carey Price should be back at some point. Jake Allen, the backup, 11-12-5, 907 save percentage. He's been a solid backup, in my opinion. He's been doing great. Power play, 19.2%, 17th in the league. Penalty killing is the same as Toronto at 78.5%, but Montreal is 23rd. And as I said, season series 73 Toronto. Alright, so original six matchup right here. For the first time since 1979, the Leafs and Canadiens are facing off against each other in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Maple Leafs, 7-2-1 season series against Canadiens. One of their best regular season records in franchise history. And Toronto is a favorite to come out of the North Division playoffs, going into the top 4. But that's not my prediction, but certainly for betting purposes and brackets, Toronto is the favorite. Montreal had a busy offseason, a massive roster overall. Their overall record's a small improvement. It's been very busy for the Canadiens with how they've handled the season. with Claude Julien being dismissed and Dominic Ducharme stepping in. Now, the storyline here is that the pressure is on Toronto. All of the pressure is. The Canadiens, they've been mediocre, and I know the fans have probably accepted it, but there's no big chokes, nothing like that. You know the pressure is on Toronto. They haven't won a playoff series since 2004. The current core has made the playoffs 4 years in a row, and had a first-round exit and a qualifying round exit. So, you know that cannot continue, because this core is desperate for some kind of playoff success. And this is going to be the best chance they've ever had. They're not facing Boston. They're not facing an American team that they don't face too many times in the regular season. This time they're facing Montreal, somewhat of a struggling team. Their roster is deep, and they are probably going to be favorites in any of their matchups in the first 2 rounds. But you don't want to put a championship or bust expectation on a team, but the time has come for this team to break the curse. Another first-round exit would be unacceptable. If they don't win 1 round or 2 rounds, no one is going to remember Auston Matthews' 41 goals in 51 games or Mitch Marner's offense. If they do remember, they won't care if Toronto fails once again in the first round. For the Canadiens, they will have the return of Brendan Gallagher, Carey Price, Shea Weber, potentially for this series. He hasn't played since April 5th for the Canadiens. Brendan Gallagher hasn't, and the Canadiens have struggled without him, as they tend to do every time he's out of the lineup. There's nobody to replace him. He's scored in a 30-goal pace for an 82-game season over the last 4 years. They also are going to get Carey Price back, who's the face of the franchise, and he's been capable of being a world beater for the Canadiens in the past. But this year, we've seen Jake Allen at times being the better goalie. Do the Canadiens go with Price, or do they alternate? That will be an interesting situation. There are some expectations for the Montreal Canadiens, not as much because they're facing Toronto, but I'm sure the Canadiens want to win at some point. Marc Bergevin, he's been the GM since 2012, and the team hasn't really accomplished much in these 9 years. They haven't been bad, but they've never been great. They've been in this middle ground of mediocrity. And yes, they're making the playoffs once again after that big rebuild. And the results are average. They've changed coaches, they've changed players, but the GM has remained the same. And Montreal has moved beyond the first round just twice during Bergevin's time here, and 0 times since the 2014-2015 season. Another story for Toronto would be Joe Thornton finally getting a chance for the Stanley Cup. Another chance. San Jose's in a bit of a rebuild, and we will see how far Toronto gets for him. 20 points in 43 games means Joe Thornton can still have some ability, and he's a very effective depth player. Goaltending. Big question for Toronto. Frederik Andersen being injured, and inconsistencies for him let Jack Campbell get a lot of playing time in the second half, and he didn't disappoint, putting a 17-3-2 record with a .923 save percentage. So we can probably expect Jack Campbell getting the start for most of these games. You can expect maybe Frederik Andersen gets something down the line, down the stretch, but Jack Campbell, probably the definitive starter for Game 1. Another big question for Montreal is, how will Cole Caulfield do? He's not going to play for Game 1. Neither is Jesperi Kotkaniemi. But Cole Caulfield, he has 4 goals in 10 games. And he's been a decent player. Looks like Caulfield may even have more potential than Nick Suzuki. And we'll see what Caulfield can do down the stretch in this series. Alright, here we go. Some stats for you. Somehow Matthews is not the top point getter for Toronto. Mitch Marner is. Matthews did play 3 less games, but he has 41 goals, 66 points in 52 games played. He's been dynamite for Toronto and leading the league in goal scoring. For Montreal side of things, of course, they have Tyler Toffoli, and as a Canucks fan, I'm ruining that mistake that the Canucks made. But Tyler Toffoli has been great, but otherwise, you don't see many goals scored by Montreal, and they don't have a very good differential at all. Jeff Petrie has been a solid defenseman with 42 points in 50 games. That's their second highest point getter. And when the defenseman is that high on your list, you know something's up with your offense, because maybe they're lacking that star player. Alright, so my prediction here is Toronto in 6. In basically all aspects, except for maybe goaltending. Toronto has a pretty definitive advantage. I'm not going to write off the Canadiens here, because the Canadiens are one of the best possession teams in the league, and they've shown the grit to get in the playoffs, to keep that 4th spot, to not let the Canucks or even the Senators sneak back in, or the Flames. So the Canadiens have showed that without Gallagher and Carey Price and Shea Weber, they were able to sneak into the playoffs. So they do have that grit and that never give up mentality. And for Toronto, you know that they have the more talented team, better overall team, and that will show in this series, probably. We'll see how competitive this series is. Game 1 is on Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope you stay tuned for that. And that's it for the Round 1 series previews for me. For any more hockey content, I will see you Sunday for my playoff recap. That will go through everything that happened since the start of the playoffs. We'll go through every single series and what the lead is, or if anyone even finished their series. I don't think anyone would finish their series by the 23rd, but we will see. It's been great playoff hockey so far, and I hope that continues. So thank you guys for watching my Round 1 previews. We'll see you later. Enjoy the playoff hockey, everyone, and take care, everyone.